By noon, millions of people had watched me take control of a passenger jet I had never been trained to fly. Almost none of them heard what happened 10 seconds earlier. The clip was 23 seconds long. An injured first officer was slumped beside me. Warning lights flashed across the cockpit. A mechanical voice repeated, "Terrain, pull up." Then came my voice. "I'm taking the left seat." The video ended before the first officer answered. Beneath it, one question appeared in capital letters: hero or reckless military pilot. By sunset, nobody seemed interested in the first word anymore. 3 days earlier, severe turbulence had left the captain unconscious and the first officer injured. A flight attendant asked whether any experienced pilot was aboard. I identified myself as a Navy aviator and told air traffic control the truth. I had never flown that Boeing. Then I took the only seat still capable of bringing those passengers home. Everyone aboard walked away. That should have mattered. Instead, the airline opened an internal investigation. A television captain called my actions dangerously confident. I turned my phone face down. That was when someone knocked. Ethan Mercer, the airline's lead safety investigator, stood outside holding a folder. His signature was on the preliminary report questioning my judgment. "You have about 5 seconds." "Fair." He handed me the folder. Inside was the cockpit transcript. I found the sentence missing from the clip. "First officer, you have the aircraft." My throat tightened. "You knew?" "No, but you signed the report." "Yes." The answer hurt more than an excuse would have. "Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't." Then Ethan pointed to a timestamp. The public clip was uploaded before investigators received the cockpit recording. I read it twice. Someone had prepared the story before the people investigating it had the full record. "Then where did they get the clip?" "That," Ethan said, "is the question they don't want you asking tomorrow." I closed the folder. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I signed what they put in front of me before I asked the question I should have asked first." He tapped the transcript. "You saved them, Harper. Now stop letting the people who edited the truth decide what that means." I handed the folder back. He did not take it. "Keep it." "Isn't this restricted?" "The version they planned to give you tomorrow would have been." "That isn't an answer." "No. It's the reason I may lose my job." I dropped the folder onto the dresser. "Don't turn this into your redemption story." "I won't." The television behind him replayed the clip without sound. My face froze under emergency lighting, one hand reaching across the instrument panel. Not the injured man beside me. Not the warning display. My hand. Ethan switched off the television. "Tomorrow's hearing will be chaired on the airline side by Richard Vale." I knew the name. Senior Vice President for Operational Safety. Silver hair, careful voice, several interviews since the landing. Each time he praised the crew before mentioning unauthorized cockpit intervention. "What does Vale want?" "For you to accept that your decisions increased the risk." "They didn't." "I know. You signed a report saying they might have." "Yes, no defense." Somehow that made being angry with him harder. The hearing notice beside the bed instructed me to arrive alone, unless represented by counsel. "You said they'll make my defense look like guilt." "They already have." Ethan removed his employee badge and placed it beside the folder. "Safety credentials begin with Sierra." The source file for that clip was accessed with an operations-level credential. "Who has those?" "Dispatch supervisors, flight operations executives, a few people in Vale's office." The problem became larger than a bad edit. The clip had come from inside operations before the safety investigation possessed the record it supposedly represented. Until then, I had been treating the scandal like a distortion that could be corrected by adding context. The credential changed that. Context had not simply been lost. Someone with access had chosen which piece would reach the public first, and had done it before the people responsible for determining what happened had the same material. My phone vibrated. Updated hearing materials. The attachment described me as assuming control, without documented authorization from the operating crew. Ethan opened the transcript beside it. "You have the aircraft. Same flight. Same cockpit. 2 versions of the same moment. One designed for public consumption, one sitting in front of me. For most of my life, when someone misunderstood me, I had believed the dignified response was to work harder and speak less. Tomorrow, that instinct would cost me. What happens if I refuse their version?" Ethan slid the transcript closer. "Then they need everyone to believe you were the most dangerous person in that cockpit." I read the transfer line again. 3 lines above it was a notation I had missed. Unidentified voice. "Who is that?" Ethan's face changed. Not confusion. Recognition. He read the line again. That person wasn't supposed to be in the cockpit. Ethan closed the transcript. We're not chasing that tonight. You recognized something. I recognized a possibility. That isn't the same thing. He gathered the loose pages but left the folder on my dresser. Tomorrow they'll put you in a room with lawyers and executives who already know which version protects them. If you walk in exhausted, Vale gets an advantage. Stop telling me how I'm supposed to feel. He nodded. Fair. He moved toward the door. My hand went to the navy duffel beside the bed. The zipper had stayed closed since I reached Seattle. Inside were clothes, a folded flight suit, and a squadron patch I had removed before boarding because I had not wanted strangers asking questions. A faded repair crossed one wing. You still active? Ethan asked. Reserve status. You miss it? That isn't a hearing question. No. Then don't practice on me. My phone vibrated. My former commanding officer. Saw the coverage. Call me before you say anything publicly. My thumb moved toward the safest reply I knew. Understood, sir. Ethan glanced at the screen but not the name. You're doing it again. Doing what? Making yourself easier for someone else to manage. You've known me for less than an hour. I've read your service record. That isn't knowing me. No. But 3 commanders described you as exceptionally composed under pressure. The notes underneath were more interesting. I knew them. Reserved. Difficult to read. Insufficiently collaborative when challenged. You know what came before those? Ethan waited. My first carrier qualification. An instructor told me I was too aggressive. I corrected. Next pass, he called me timid. Another pilot flew nearly the same approach and got called disciplined. So you stopped arguing. I stopped giving people extra material. When a squadron mate joked that I had earned a training slot because command needed better numbers, I said nothing. When another officer repeated my briefing point after dismissing it, I let him own it. When an instructor told me anger made women careless in a cockpit, I made sure he never saw mine. I worked harder. I spoke less. Eventually, people called that professionalism. The cost was harder to see. I became good at leaving rooms before anyone could ask whether something had hurt. I stopped correcting small lies because correcting them felt needy. I learned to make anger invisible, then mistook invisibility for control. When people described me as calm, I accepted the compliment even when calm was only the shape I forced pain into. I thought if my work was clean enough, nobody could make me explain myself. And did it work? No. He did not soften the answer for me. I deleted the safe reply and called my former commander. Cole. Sir, you all right? Yes. The answer came automatically. Ethan lowered his eyes. My commander continued. Airline counsel contacted me. They asked whether you've ever been counseled for taking control from another pilot. The question had been shaped around the answer they wanted. What did you tell them? That I saw you take an aircraft from a student who froze on approach. I remembered it. A young pilot had locked both hands around the controls and stopped responding. I took the aircraft before we lost the runway. Nobody had called it reckless then. They'll use that. I know. My old instinct arrived. Protect the institution. Do not create another problem. Sir, you don't need to get involved. This isn't your fight. He was quiet. Harper, that's exactly what you said after Mason accused you of falsifying his training score. My stomach tightened. Mason had failed an evaluation under me, then claimed I had targeted him after an argument. Command cleared me quietly. His version traveled farther. I refused to correct people because the investigation was confidential and because explaining myself felt like surrendering dignity. Months later, a promotion board asked about interpersonal concerns in my training command. The lie survived longer than the finding that disproved it. I had told myself the damage was minor because I still flew, still promoted, still did the work. But the next time a room questioned me, I entered already prepared to take up less space. That was the part no investigation could clear. You don't get extra points for bleeding quietly, my commander said. I understand. No. You say that when you want a conversation to end. Ethan turned toward the window, giving me privacy without pretending he could not hear. Tell the truth tomorrow, my commander said. Let other people be uncomfortable. After the call, Ethan crossed to the hotel coffee machine and discovered there was no coffee pod. That's tragic. What? You landed a passenger jet, and this place gives you powdered creamer with no coffee. A laugh escaped me. He returned from the vending area with 2 terrible cups and sat in the chair farthest from the bed. No touching. No soft confession. Just bad coffee and a yellow legal pad. What are you doing? Helping you prepare questions. I thought you were helping me prepare answers. That would be my version of your story. He pushed the pad across the table. You need yours. I uncapped the pen. Who authorized release of the cockpit clip? Who accessed the source file? Why was the first officer's authorization removed? Why did the preliminary report describe my intervention before anyone interviewed me? Ethan answered none of them for me. Once, he reached toward the pad as if to add something, then pulled his hand back. What? I asked. Nothing. If I think of a question, I'll write it on my own page. It was such a small correction to his own instinct that I nearly missed it. He was learning the same lesson from the opposite direction. I had spent years surrendering my voice. He had spent years believing expertise gave him permission to shape other people's conclusions. That mattered more than I wanted it to. My phone lit again. Unknown number. Commander Cole, I was on the flight. Please don't let them say you forced your way into that cockpit. I saw who came out before you went in. My pen stopped. I turned the screen toward Ethan. The unidentified voice was no longer just a line in a transcript. Someone had seen its owner. I typed one question. Who was it? For years, my safest instinct had been to say less. This time I pressed send. The reply came almost immediately. I don't know his name, but he was wearing an airline executive badge. Then a second message appeared. He told the flight attendant not to call for another pilot. The passenger who had messaged me introduced herself as Marisol Grant. She was a labor attorney from Portland, which explained her first question. Are you recording this? No. Good. Neither am I. We met the next morning in a coffee shop across from the hotel. 3 hours before the hearing. Ethan sat at a separate table near the window because Marisol had agreed to speak to me, not to the airline investigator whose signature was already attached to my case. More importantly, he respected that. Marisol placed her boarding pass between us. Seat 2C, first class, close enough to see the cockpit door. I was awake when the turbulence hit, she said. After the drop, a man came out of the cockpit. What did he look like? Late 50s, gray hair, navy suit, airline badge on a red lanyard. My stomach tightened. Richard Vail wore a red executive lanyard in every television interview. I did not say his name. He argued with the flight attendant. Marisol continued. I heard her say they needed another pilot. And him? He said, do not make that announcement yet. I kept my hands against my knees. Are you certain? Yes. Why didn't you tell investigators? Her expression hardened. I tried. What happened? An airline representative took my information after we landed. He said someone would contact me. No one did. No. Marisol removed a folded sheet of paper from her purse. A handwritten statement. I wrote this in the airport while it was fresh. She slid it toward me. At the bottom was a date, a time, and her signature. Every sentence was plain. The aircraft dropped. A gray-haired airline executive exited the cockpit. The flight attendant asked to call for a pilot. The executive told her to wait. Minutes later, the announcement was made. Then I entered the cockpit. My name did not appear until the final paragraph. For days, every official version had begun with me. This one began with what happened before anyone knew I existed. May I give this to my attorney? Yes. May I use your name? Marisol hesitated, then nodded. If they make me testify, I will. I folded the statement carefully. You really didn't know who that man was? She asked. No. He looked like he knew exactly what he was doing. That doesn't mean he did. The answer came quickly. Fair. Careful. Protect everyone from a conclusion until they had earned it. You're defending him. No. I'm refusing to invent what I don't know. For once, speaking for myself did not require writing someone else's story. After Marisol left, Ethan crossed the coffee shop with his untouched cup. What did she say? I told him. His face changed when I repeated the line about delaying the announcement. You know who it was. I know who it might have been. That isn't what your face said. He stared into his coffee. Richard Vail was listed as a non-revenue executive passenger on the flight. You knew he was aboard? I learned it last night. And you didn't tell me. I needed to confirm it. I laughed once. That habit seems expensive. He absorbed that, then placed a transparent sleeve on the table. Inside was a torn strip of yellow paper. What is that? A carbon copy from the forward galley irregularity pad. The handwriting belonged to Chloe. Short entries. Times written in words. Captain injured. First officer injured. Executive passenger requested cockpit access. Executive passenger exited. Instruction received to delay cabin pilot request. My pulse moved into my throat. Where did you get it? Chloe kept the carbon because the original disappeared from the incident packet. There it was. Evidence created during the emergency. Before headlines. Before lawyers. Before anyone knew there would be a Harper Cole to blame. Why did she keep it? She said the sequence bothered her. Ethan pushed the sleeve toward me. She was told the original had been collected for review. By whom? Operations. Not safety. Operations. The same credential family that had accessed the cockpit clip. Does she identify Vale? No. Then this proves an executive passenger interfered with the timing. It doesn't prove which executive. Correct. No inflation. No certainty we had not earned. Will she testify? Ethan's mouth tightened. She agreed to speak yesterday. She canceled this morning. Why? She received notice that her access to scheduled flights was temporarily suspended pending a procedural review. They suspended her for reporting what happened. We don't know that. Now it was his turn to refuse the easy conclusion. I hated that I respected it. Her union representative told her not to speak without counsel. Good. Ethan glanced at me. If she's being pressured, I don't want her protecting me by destroying herself. He nodded. My phone rang. Airline legal. The old reflex told me to answer immediately. Be cooperative. Be reasonable. Make yourself easy to clear. I let it stop. A voicemail appeared. I played it on speaker. Commander Cole, this is Martin Shaw with Airline Counsel. Today's hearing has been moved forward. We ask that you arrive within 45 minutes. We also understand you may have been contacted by passengers or crew. Please preserve any materials and refrain from soliciting statements outside the formal investigation. Marisol's statement sat beneath my palm. Chloe's carbon copy lay inside its sleeve. Ethan reached for neither. What do you want to do? It was the right question. Not what should we do, not what do they expect. What do you want to do? I put Marisol's statement into the folder. We go to the hearing. Ethan remained seated. We? You said I'd be walking in alone. I did. You were wrong. His eyes lifted. I handed the yellow carbon copy back to him. This stays with you until my attorney sees it. Understood. And you don't speak for me. I won't. If Vale is there, you don't accuse him. I won't. I slung the navy duffel over my shoulder. At the door, Ethan's phone vibrated. He checked the screen and stopped. What? He turned it toward me. A security still from the airport operations corridor had just been sent by someone inside the airline. Richard Vale was entering a restricted office less than an hour after the landing. In his hand was a yellow galley incident sheet, the original. I kept staring at the photograph. Vale had spent 3 days telling cameras the investigation would follow the evidence wherever it led. Now I was looking at evidence that had passed through his hands before the safety team even knew it existed. The painful part was not that someone might have lied. It was how easily I had helped them by assuming silence would protect the truth. Under the image was one message. Ask him why he had it before safety arrived. The hearing was not a hearing. It was a stage. Every chair faced a long walnut table beneath the airline logo. Richard Vale sat in the center with airline counsel beside him. Flight operations, safety representatives, and union attorneys for Captain Miller and First Officer Davis filled the remaining seats. Too many witnesses for anything said here to stay private. Vale stood when I entered. Commander Cole, thank you for coming. He said my rank carefully, like respect could soften what waited on the screen behind him. I put my navy duffel beside my chair. Ethan sat behind me, not beside me. That had been my choice. Vale noticed. Mr. Mercer, your preliminary work has already been submitted. I'm still assigned to the investigation. For now. Vale sat. Airline counsel described the meeting as a factual review with no predetermined conclusion. Then, they played the 23-second clip. Warning lights. The injured first officer. My voice. I'm taking the left seat. Cut. Vale folded his hands. Did you say those words? Yes. Had you ever flown that aircraft type? No. Were you trained on its commercial systems? No. Were you employed by this airline? No. Each answer landed exactly where he wanted it. Then you understand why questions have been raised. I understand why an edited clip raises them. Vale's expression stayed pleasant. Edited is an interesting word. It ends before the first officer answers me. The public clip was not intended to reproduce the entire record. Then it shouldn't be used to characterize the entire event. A lawyer stopped writing. Vale picked up his pen. Were you frightened during the approach? Yes. Frustrated? Yes. Overwhelmed? No. He glanced toward flight operations. There are concerns that your decision-making became unstable. My fingers tightened beneath the table. Unstable. Not mistaken. Not inexperienced. A word broad enough to stain every answer after it. The old reflex arrived immediately. Lower your voice. Make them comfortable. Prove you are reasonable. My hand moved toward the water glass, then stopped. What decision was unstable? The decision to assume command of an unfamiliar aircraft. Who was capable of flying it when I did? That is part of what we are establishing. The captain was unconscious. Yes. The first officer was injured. Yes. Did he transfer control to me? Vale paused. Airline counsel answered. The transcript contains language that could be interpreted that way. Read it. Commander, please read what he said after I took the seat. Nobody moved. I opened my copy. You have the aircraft. The first officer's union representative leaned forward. Vale's pen stopped tapping. That statement does not resolve whether events should have reached that point. There it was. If they could not make me wrong for taking control, they would move the accusation backward until I became responsible for needing to. I opened my legal pad. Then when did the cabin first request another pilot? Vale's eyes flicked toward Ethan. This is not an examination of airline personnel. I'm establishing the sequence. That is our responsibility. And I'm part of that sequence. Ethan shifted behind me. Vale raised one hand. Mr. Mercer. Ethan stopped. Vale turned to the others. For transparency, Mr. Mercer signed the preliminary assessment now being questioned. Every face moved toward him. The trap was clean. If Ethan defended me, Vale could call him inconsistent. If he admitted the report was flawed, Vale could call him compromised. If he mentioned material obtained outside formal channels, he could expose Chloe and whoever had sent the security image. Ethan sat back. Vale faced me again. Has Mr. Mercer provided you internal airline material? I closed the folder. He provided the cockpit transcript relevant to claims already made publicly about me. Was he authorized? You need to ask him. I am asking whether you accepted restricted material. The familiar escape opened in front of me. Say I did not understand. Apologize. Distance myself from Ethan. I placed both hands on the table. I accepted the words spoken to me while I was flying your aircraft. Vale leaned back. Your aircraft? The airline's aircraft. A meaningful correction. A grammatical one. A cough came from the far end of the table. Vale's smile appeared late. Then the communications executive beside him passed over a note. Vale read it. We have another matter to address. The screen changed. A news site appeared. A photograph showed Ethan entering my hotel the previous night. The headline suggested the lead investigator had met privately with the military pilot under investigation. My stomach went cold. Vale turned toward Ethan. Did you spend last night in Commander Cole's hotel room? I met with her regarding evidence. For how long? That is not relevant. It becomes relevant if restricted material was exchanged outside formal procedure. He left, I said. Everyone faced me. He brought documents. We discussed the hearing. Then he left. Vale softened his voice. Nobody is accusing you of anything personal, Commander. The sentence made everyone imagine exactly that. Then don't imply it. The communications executive spoke. The concern is perception. They had failed to isolate me from the truth, so they were contaminating the person standing nearest to it. Vale folded the note. Mr. Mercer will be removed from the investigation pending an ethics review. Ethan did not argue. He unclipped his badge and placed it on the table. A security officer appeared by the door. I stood. Airline counsel raised a hand. Commander Cole, we are not finished. Yes, you are. Leaving may be characterized as unwillingness to cooperate. There it was again. Be agreeable or become suspicious. I lifted my duffel. Vale remained seated. You may want to consider whether Mr. Mercer's involvement has helped you. His badge lay between us. I faced the table. You called my judgment unstable. No one answered. You played an edited clip after receiving the transcript. You questioned why I took control without reading the injured pilot giving it to me. When I asked what happened before I entered the cockpit, You changed the subject to the investigator who brought me the missing words. Vale's jaw tightened. Barely, but enough. I opened the door. Camera shutters erupted from the corridor. Someone had told reporters when the hearing would end. Ethan stopped several feet away from me. Standing closer would become another photograph. We both understood. A reporter raised his phone. The headline had already changed. Reckless pilot walks out with suspended investigator. That was the wound Vale wanted. They had taken the first person willing to question their version and made being seen beside him look like proof that neither of us could be trusted. The rain followed us from the airline building to the parking garage. Ethan stood under a concrete beam with his jacket dark at the shoulders and his employee badge gone. "Your hotel is surrounded," he said. "So is yours?" "My place is quieter." I gave him a look. That sounded worse out loud. Despite myself, I smiled. He did not. "My sister has a vacant apartment above her bakery. Separate entrance. No cameras, unless someone climbs a fire escape." "I'm not hiding." "I know." "Then why are you offering?" "Because you haven't eaten since this morning." That annoyed me because it was true. The bakery had already closed when we arrived. Upstairs, the apartment was small, a narrow kitchen, a couch repaired with darker fabric, a table beside a rain-fogged window. Ethan found soup, crackers, and a chipped blue bowl. "You do this often? Feed suspended witnesses? Bring women to secret apartments?" His hand stopped on the can opener. "No." The answer was too quick to tease. He heated the soup and put it in front of me, then moved to the other side of the table. He set a clean towel beside my elbow, without comment. I used it on the rain that had soaked the strap of my duffel. He noticed the raw mark the strap had rubbed across my palm and pushed a small first aid tin toward me. I opened it myself. That mattered. Distance again. "You can stop doing that," I said. "Doing what?" "Sitting like there's an invisible attorney between us." "There probably should be." "That wasn't what I meant." "I know." The spoon stayed in my hand. I had spent the afternoon being called unstable by a man who had never watched me fly. Now the only person who had challenged him would not sit within reach of me. I was scared today. Ethan's expression changed. Not in the hearing. After. I set the spoon down. "When they put that photograph of you on the screen, I knew what they were doing. They were making me radioactive. They were making me evidence." He said nothing. "That's what scared me. I can survive being disliked." I was scared that if I trusted one person and they turned that into another weapon, I would go back to doing everything alone. That would be reasonable. No, it would be familiar. He did not try to correct me. I finished half the soup before he spoke. "There's something I haven't told you." Of course there was. He placed a folded sheet on the table, a copy of his preliminary notes. 2 lines had been circled. Cabin pilot request delayed. Operations contact unclear. The date was from the morning after the landing, before he signed the preliminary report. "You saw the delay?" "Yes." "And you signed anyway?" "Yes." Something cold moved through me. "You told me you signed what they put in front of you because you didn't ask the right question." "I did ask one." I pushed the bowl away. "Then why didn't you follow it?" "Vale told me the delay was confusion in the galley and that the operations contact was routine." "And you believed him?" "I chose to." The distinction hurt. "Why?" Ethan turned the paper between his fingers. "My wife died 3 years ago." I waited. "She worked for the airline. Medical event. During an overnight trip. Vale got me on the first flight out. He handled the paperwork, kept the press away from my family, and made sure her crew got leave." I understood. "You owed him." I felt like I did, but you treated that feeling like a fact. "Yes. I saw the delay in the timeline. I knew it deserved another interview. Vale told me there was nothing there. And part of you wanted him to be right." Ethan's face tightened. "Yes." I stood so quickly the chair scraped the floor. "You let me walk into that hearing knowing the delay bothered you." "I knew it bothered me. I didn't know what it meant." "You knew enough to hide this from me." I told myself I was protecting the integrity of the investigation. "That's a good sentence. What was the real one?" His answer took longer. "I didn't want the man who helped me bury my wife to be the man who buried the truth." The anger changed shape. I went to the window. "You didn't stay quiet because you were afraid." "No, you stayed quiet because the truth might have cost you a memory you needed." "Yes, and I paid for that." "Yes." No excuse, no plea, just yes. I turned. "You don't get credit for admitting it now." "I know. That doesn't make me trust you." "I know that too." I hated the steadiness of him. I hated that part of me wanted to cross the small kitchen and put my forehead against his chest just to stop holding myself upright. Maybe he saw something change in my face. He stood, not closer, just up. "I want to say I'm sorry," he said. "Then say it. I'm sorry. That's not enough." "No." I stepped closer anyway. One step. Enough to notice the rein on his collar. His hand lifted toward my arm, then stopped before it reached me. That restraint hurt more than contact might have. "Harper, don't." He lowered his hand. "I want this to be simple." "So do I. But it isn't." "No. If anything happens between us, it cannot start because you feel guilty. It won't. And it cannot start because I'm afraid to stand alone." His jaw tightened. "It won't." I shook my head. "You don't get to promise that for me." A tired half-smile touched his mouth. "Fair." This time the word almost broke something open. I stepped back. "Not tonight." Ethan nodded. "Not tonight." He carried the bowl to the sink. A small, ordinary kindness. No rescue in it. No claim. I folded his handwritten notes and placed them beside the transcript in my bag. The two objects looked different now. One proved what had been said in the cockpit. The other proved how easily a decent person could see a problem and choose not to disturb it. My phone buzzed. A message from my attorney. Airline Counsel had issued a preservation notice covering passenger statements, crew notes, and internal communications. Then came the second line. They were seeking an emergency order preventing me from releasing any cockpit-related material publicly. I showed Ethan. "They're moving fast." "No." I put my hand over the bag containing the transcript. "They're moving scared." Ethan did not answer. Neither did I. The truth between us had become harder, which made it more real than comfort would have. The first thing the truth cost me was not my reputation. It was a cockpit. My phone rang before sunrise. Commander Hayes from my reserve squadron did not waste time. "Cole, your flight status is temporarily paused." I sat on the edge of the borrowed bed upstairs from the bakery. "Medical?" "No." "Training?" "No." He exhaled. "Command review." The words were gentle enough to make the meaning worse. "Because of the airline investigation. Because your judgment is being questioned publicly." "Has anyone questioned it privately?" A pause. "Not to me." "Then why am I grounded?" "You know how this works." I did. That was the problem. Nobody had declared me unsafe. Nobody had found misconduct. But until the noise disappeared, letting me fly created risk for people whose careers depended on avoiding risk. "How long?" "I don't know." My flight credentials were inside my wallet. I took them out after the call and placed them on the kitchen table. For years, that small card had meant someone trusted me with an aircraft. Now it was just plastic. Ethan entered from the stairwell carrying coffee. He saw the card. "What happened?" "They grounded me." His hand tightened around the cups. "Because of Vail?" "Because nobody needs to prove anything if they're willing to call it temporary." He set my coffee down. "I can make a statement." "No." "I can explain that, the preliminary report." "No." "Harper." I slid the flight card back into my wallet. "You're suspended from the investigation. Anything you say publicly becomes another story about us." "I don't care what they say about me." "I do." He stopped. "Not because I'm protecting you. Because I won't let my case become the place where you punish yourself." That landed. Good. It needed to. Ethan pulled out the chair across from me. He did not sit until I nodded. Boundary. Still there. My attorney called an hour later. The airline had obtained a temporary restriction preventing public release of cockpit materials, while ownership and confidentiality were reviewed. It did not prevent us from using properly obtained evidence in formal proceedings. It did something more useful to them. It prevented me from simply putting the missing words in front of the public. "They can keep playing their clip?" I asked. "They can comment on material already public, but I can't release the context. Not without risking contempt." I walked to the window. Below us, Ethan's sister was opening the bakery. She carried trays to the display case, while a delivery driver stacked flour against the wall. Normal people, beginning a normal morning. My phone vibrated again. An email this time. A civilian aviation training company in Nevada. I had been scheduled to begin a contract with them after reserve duty. The message thanked me for my interest. Due to ongoing circumstances, they were withdrawing the offer. No accusation, no finding, just ongoing circumstances. I handed the phone to my attorney when she arrived. She read it and put it beside the legal papers. This is useful. It was my job. I know. No, it was supposed to be what came next. She stopped organizing the papers. I had not said that aloud before. The Navy had given me a life built around competence, but I was tired of proving I could survive every place I entered. The training position was supposed to be quieter, teaching, home most nights. A future where I did not need a carrier deck moving beneath my feet to know who I was. Now even that had become collateral damage. Ethan stood near the kitchen counter. He said nothing. I appreciated him for it, then hated myself a little for appreciating him. My attorney opened another document. The airline is offering an alternative. Of course they were. She slid it across the table. If I agreed not to challenge the preliminary safety characterization publicly, the airline would issue a joint statement praising my courage while noting that emergency procedures remained under review. No admission by either side. No accusation. No truth. What happens to the internal investigation? They close the portion involving you without a formal finding. And Ethan, separate matter. I read the proposed statement. The words were beautiful. Courage, service, gratitude, cooperation. They had built a medal out of language and hollowed out the center. They want me to accept being called brave instead of being called right. My attorney nodded. They want the conflict to end. Ethan turned away from the window. Don't decide because of me. I raised my eyes. I wasn't going to. His face registered the boundary before he nodded. Good. This decision could not be about saving his job. It could not be about trusting him. It could not be about whatever had nearly happened between us the night before. It had to belong to me. My attorney left the agreement on the table. You don't have to answer today. After she went downstairs, Ethan picked up his jacket. Where are you going? Home. You can stay. I know. Then why leave? Because you're about to make a decision that changes your life, and I'm standing inside the reasons on both sides. Trust did not arrive because he stayed. It arrived because he knew when to leave. At the door, he placed the apartment key on the counter. You keep this. Why? My sister said you can stay as long as you need. And you? I have my own key. I folded my arms. That sounds suspiciously like a boundary loophole. A small smile appeared. Then lock the deadbolt. He left. I did. The click sounded louder than it should have. For the next hour, I sat alone with the settlement. No Ethan. No commander. No investigators. No cameras. Just me, and the version of my life available if I signed. The airline would praise me. The investigation would fade. My reserve status might eventually return. Another training company might hire me. All I had to surrender was the right to insist that what happened had a factual shape. I reached for the pen. My hand rested above the signature line. The old Harper understood this bargain. Take the quiet exit. Let people believe whatever makes the machinery move again. Work harder somewhere else. Speak less. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. The pen touched the paper. Then I noticed my Navy duffel beneath the table. The squadron patch from the hotel was tucked into an open pocket. The repaired thread crossed one wing. I remembered why I had repaired it instead of replacing it. Damage was not the same thing as failure. I put the pen down. Then I called my attorney. I'm not signing. Are you sure? No. She waited. I smiled despite myself. But I'm done requiring certainty before I tell the truth. Another pause. All right. Then we prepare for the next stage. What stage? The airline has requested that the formal review be transferred to an independent aviation safety panel. That surprised me. Why would Vail want an independent panel? I don't think he does. She turned a page. The request wasn't filed by Vail. Who filed it? The first officer. I stood. Davis? Yes. Through his union attorney. The injured man whose missing sentence had started everything was finally speaking for himself. My attorney continued. He also refused to endorse the airline's account of the Cockpit transfer. The settlement remained unsigned on the table. Since the landing, every turn had felt controlled by Vail, Ethan, or me. This one had not. The story was beginning to acquire witnesses the airline could not choose. By noon, the independent review had become public. By 1, the story had changed again. Someone had found Mason. His name appeared beneath a photograph from my training command. Former Navy pilot accused Cole of taking control during dispute. The article never said the complaint had been rejected. It said only that the matter had been handled internally. That was enough. My attorney stood beside the sink while I read it from the apartment above the bakery. They're building a pattern. I know. Can we release the finding? Not without command authorization. And how long will that take? Longer than the headline. My phone filled with messages. People who had defended me after the landing were asking whether I had done this before. The lie had stopped arguing about one flight. It was becoming a personality. That was worse because personalities did not require evidence. Once people decided what kind of person I was, every old story could be bent to fit it, and every future answer could be treated as proof. Ethan arrived and remained by the door. He had followed the boundary without being reminded. I turned the article toward him. Mason. You knew about him? Yes. Did Vale? Anyone with the personnel summary would. My attorney closed her laptop. Somebody gave a reporter the existence of a sealed training complaint. The bakery phone rang downstairs, then rang again. Ethan's sister appeared at the top of the stairs, flour across one cheek. People are calling here asking whether Harper is staying upstairs. My stomach dropped. How did they get this address? They didn't say. Ethan moved toward the stairs. I caught his sleeve. No, your sister is being dragged into this. So we deal with it. Not by turning her shop into a defensive position. His sister offered to close. I picked up my duffel. No, you have employees and customers. I am not becoming the reason everyone around me has to stop living. Ethan's jaw tightened. That sounds close to doing everything alone again. It isn't. Then what is it? A boundary. I asked my attorney to find somewhere else for me to stay. Leaving hurt more than I expected. The apartment had become the first place since the landing where I had slept without hearing my own voice replayed on television. But staying would make Ethan's sister part of the story. My attorney received a call before we left. Her expression changed. Davis has withdrawn from the independent panel. I stopped packing. Why? His union says he is medically unable to participate. He requested it. I know. Did he change his statement? No formal statement. Ethan spoke carefully. Then don't assume. I turned on him. He was the one person whose words they couldn't edit around. I know. Stop saying that. He took it. My attorney continued. Davis's family also received notice that the airline may contest portions of his disability coverage if questions arise about whether his actions contributed to the emergency. They're tying his benefits to cooperation. We cannot prove that. No. We can prove they sent the notice. Ethan sat. His face had gone pale. That isn't standard. How do you know? Because Vale stopped something similar once for my wife. The old debt returned in a different shape. Vale had known exactly what helping Ethan would mean. Maybe that was why Ethan had wanted to believe him. My phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A transcription appeared. Commander Cole, this is Richard Vale. I believe the current escalation is harming people who had no role in the decisions under review. If you reconsider the proposed resolution, I can ensure the airline stops discussing your prior training history. My attorney held out her hand. I gave her the phone. Ethan stood. Play it again. She did. Vale sounded calm, almost compassionate. When it ended, Ethan stared at the screen. He said prior training history. Yes. He shouldn't know Mason was the history they used. He could have seen the article. Ethan shook his head. I received an internal ethics notice this morning. Vale has been in closed executive review since before it published. Devices surrendered at entry. I understood. He knew what would be in it. My attorney raised a hand. That is inference, not proof. She was right. Ethan began pacing, then stopped. Preserve the voicemail. No triumph. No declaration that we had him. The man who had signed too quickly was learning to wait. Another notification appeared. A live press briefing had begun outside airline headquarters. Vale stood behind microphones. A reporter asked about Mason. We are not interested in attacking Commander Cole personally. We are concerned only with a documented pattern of intervention under pressure. My attorney froze the video. Documented. The complaint was sealed. So was the finding clearing me. Vale had publicly authenticated a pattern he should not have been able to know. Another reporter shouted, Did Commander Cole force her way into the cockpit? Vale's polished expression slipped. No one is saying she forced her way past Chloe. He stopped. The reporter frowned. Chloe? Vale recovered. The flight attendant. My skin prickled. Chloe's identity had never appeared publicly. Neither had her role in the delayed pilot request. My attorney whispered, Don't react. I did not. Vale kept talking, but the sentence had escaped. He had named the witness tied to the missing galley report before anyone outside the investigation was supposed to know she mattered. Ethan reached for his jacket. "Where are you going?" "To my ethics counsel." "No." He faced me. "You're still running toward the fire every time you feel guilty." His shoulders dropped. I pointed to the chair. "Sit." He did. I called my attorney back to the table. "We preserve the voicemail and the press conference. We accuse nobody publicly." "Agreed. We find out what Davis needs before we ask what he knows." She nodded. "And Mason?" I stared at his name on the article. The old instinct wanted to call him. Explain. Ask him to correct the record. Instead, I closed the page. Mason had his chance to tell the truth years ago. Ethan watched me. I am not asking him to give me mine. Downstairs, the bakery phone started ringing again. This time, Ethan's sister unplugged it. The crisis had changed. Vale was no longer only defending an airline. He was reaching into careers, medical benefits, sealed history, and anyone standing close enough to contradict him. And now he was making mistakes. That should have made me feel safer. It did not. It meant he was scared. Scared people did not always retreat. Sometimes they reached for whatever they could still control. The independent panel did not meet at airline headquarters. That mattered. No airline logo, no communications team, no Richard Vale controlling the table. 3 aviation specialists sat across from me in a federal conference room while attorneys, union representatives, and airline officials filled the rows behind us. Ethan sat near the back with his ethics counsel. He had brought nothing to my table. No folder. No advice. My Navy duffel rested beneath my chair. The transcript lay in front of me. The panel chair adjusted her microphone. "Commander Cole, we are interested in sequence, not reputation. Tell us what happened. Not whether I was frightened. Not whether I was difficult. What happened?" I placed both hands beside the transcript. After the aircraft encountered severe turbulence, a cabin announcement requested a licensed pilot. I identified myself as a Navy aviator. When I entered the cockpit, the captain was incapacitated, and the first officer was injured. I told him who I was. I told him I had no experience in that aircraft type. When he could no longer maintain control, I stated that I was taking the left seat. The chair nodded. What did he say? I did not need to open the transcript. "You have the aircraft." Across the room, Vale remained motionless. Davis had withdrawn from an in-person appearance, but after his union secured written assurance that his medical benefits would not depend on his testimony, he agreed to appear remotely. His face appeared on a monitor. He looked thinner than I remembered. His injured arm was secured against his chest. The chair asked whether I had taken control without authorization. No. His voice was weak but clear. I transferred the aircraft to her. "Were you capable of continuing?" "No." "Did Commander Cole pressure you to surrender control?" "No." The airline attorney rose. "First Officer Davis is recovering from significant trauma. We ask that the panel consider the reliability of memory formed under extreme stress." Davis leaned toward his camera. "Then, consider the transcript." No one spoke for several seconds. The chair thanked him and ended the connection. Vale requested permission to address the panel. He spoke carefully. "No one disputes Commander Cole's courage. The question is whether a chain of decisions created an emergency in which an unqualified person became the final safeguard." There it was again. Move the accusation backward until responsibility found me. The chair asked him to clarify. Vale described procedural confusion after the turbulence. He suggested the crew had acted under extraordinary pressure. He called the delayed cabin request unfortunate but not consequential. I wrote one word on my legal pad. "Delayed," the panel chair noticed. "Commander, I have a question about that delay." Airline counsel objected. The chair allowed it. I turned toward Vale. "Who instructed the cabin crew to wait before requesting another pilot?" Vale folded his hands. "I don't recall anyone giving such an instruction." I removed Chloe's carbon copy from my folder. No flourish. No accusation. This was created during the emergency. The panel already had an authenticated copy. The chair read the relevant line. Executive passenger instructed delay of cabin pilot request. Vale's attorney leaned toward him. Vale spoke before the whisper reached him. "That note doesn't say I gave the instruction. I didn't say you did." His face changed. A tiny movement, gone quickly. But the panel chair had seen it too. I continued. Were you the executive passenger? Vale hesitated. I was aboard. Did you enter the cockpit? Briefly. That admission had never appeared in the public account. Why? To assess the condition of the flight crew. Are you a pilot? No. Medical professional? No. No further question. Vale's expression hardened. You're implying my presence interfered with the response. No. I kept my voice level. I'm establishing that you entered the cockpit before I did. The panel chair turned to Vale. Why was that omitted from the preliminary sequence? Vale glanced toward Ethan. Mr. Mercer prepared that assessment. The room shifted. There was his escape. Ethan. Again. The chair called him forward. He sat at the witness table. Did you know Mr. Vale entered the cockpit when you signed the preliminary assessment? No. Did you know the pilot request had been delayed? Ethan paused. I knew there was an unexplained delay. Vale's attorney leaned forward. And you signed the report? Yes. Then any defect belongs to your investigation. Ethan's face tightened. He could have defended himself. He didn't. Yes. I should have followed it. Vale relaxed. Then Ethan continued. But I asked Mr. Vale about the delay. Vale's head turned. The chair leaned forward. What did he tell you? That it was confusion in the galley and had no operational significance. Vale spoke sharply. That is not what I said. Ethan stopped. Nobody else did. The chair asked, What did you say? Vale answered too quickly. I told him Chloe misunderstood my instruction. I asked her to wait until we knew whether Davis could maintain control. My pulse slowed. Chloe. Again. This time, there was nowhere for the name to hide. I had not identified her. Ethan had not identified her. The carbon copy had been introduced without naming its author. The panel chair turned to airline counsel. Who is Chloe? Vale's attorney closed his eyes briefly. I answered only when asked. She was the flight attendant who documented the delay. Vale leaned toward his microphone. She was panicking. Her recollection cannot be treated as operational fact. I felt the temptation. Push. Accuse. Make him admit everything. Instead, I stopped. The chair did not. How did you know she documented it? Vale froze. His attorney touched his arm. Too late. The chair requested the original galley incident record. Airline counsel said it had been routed through operations before reaching safety. Who received it? Nobody answered immediately. The security still was already in the panel's evidence file. They did not need me to explain it. Vale finally said, I may have handled the document briefly. The chair asked why. Operational review. Before safety? Yes. And did you disclose that when the preliminary report was prepared? Vale reached for his water. His hand struck the glass. Water spread across his papers. Nobody moved to help him. I don't recall. That was the first answer he gave all day that sounded frightened. The panel recessed. Reporters waited outside, but I stayed seated. Ethan approached only after my attorney nodded. You did it. No. I folded the transcript. Davis did his part. Chloe did hers. You finally did yours. And you? I slid the transcript into my bag. I stopped letting everyone else decide which question I was allowed to answer. My attorney returned. The panel had issued interim findings. My intervention in the cockpit was considered authorized by the operating first officer. The characterization of my actions as unstable was unsupported by the available record. The airline's handling of evidence, the delayed cabin request, and the release of edited material would undergo separate review. Vale had been placed on administrative leave. No applause, just consequences. Outside, microphones crowded the steps. A reporter shouted whether I wanted Vale fired. No. Another asked whether I planned to sue. My attorney can answer that. Then someone called, Commander Cole, do you consider yourself a hero? Months ago, I might have found the safest answer. Something humble, something easy to print. I adjusted the duffel on my shoulder. I was a pilot who was asked to help. The cameras clicked. The first officer gave me the aircraft. The crew helped keep the cabin safe. People on the ground talked me through systems I didn't know. That's what happened. What about the people who called you reckless? I thought about the 23 seconds that had nearly become my entire identity. They're allowed to change their minds. I stepped away from the microphones. Ethan remained near the building entrance. He did not come toward me. He waited. This time, when I crossed the distance between us, It was not because I needed someone to stand between me and the story. It was because the choice was mine. 3 months later, I still hated the sound of an overhead chime. The first time it happened after the hearing, I was sitting in the back row of a training simulator briefing room when the intercom clicked above me. My shoulders locked before I could stop them. Nobody noticed. Or if they did, they were kind enough not to say anything. My reserve flight status had not been fully restored. The review board cleared me of misconduct, but command wanted additional evaluation before putting me back in an aircraft. There was no apology attached to the decision, just language about procedure, confidence, and operational caution. The civilian training company in Nevada never renewed its offer. Another school outside Tacoma offered me part-time simulator work instead. Less money, no cockpit, no applause. I accepted. At first, I told myself it was temporary. Then I stopped needing that word. Some mornings, helping a student recover from a bad approach felt smaller than landing a passenger jet. Other mornings, it felt harder. You could not muscle someone into trusting their instruments. You had to let them make the correction themselves. I understood that better now. The airline review continued without me. Vail remained on administrative leave while investigators examined evidence handling and public communications. No dramatic arrest. No ruined empire. His attorney issued careful statements. The airline changed several procedures and called them improvements unrelated to any individual failure. That irritated me more than I expected. I had imagined truth would feel louder. Mostly, it felt administrative. Davis sent me a short note after his surgery. "Thank you for taking the aircraft." That was all. I kept it. Chloe returned to flying after her union challenged the suspension. Marisol went back to Portland and refused every interview request. Ethan's ethics review lasted longer than mine. He was cleared of an improper personal relationship with me and formally reprimanded for handling internal material outside procedure. He did not appeal. He also did not return to the airline safety division. When I asked why, he said, "I don't trust who I became there." I did not tell him that sounded noble. It wasn't. He had lost a career he had been good at because of mistakes he had actually made. His accountability did not disappear because he had eventually done the right thing. He took a consulting job with a small aviation risk firm and complained constantly about their coffee. We did not start dating after the hearing. We had dinner once, then twice. Then I canceled the third because a photograph of us leaving a restaurant appeared online, and I spent the next morning wondering whether every kind thing between us would become evidence again. Ethan did not tell me I was overreacting. He sent one message, "Ask me tomorrow." The next day, I did. That became our rule. No promises made in panic. No decisions made because one of us felt guilty. No pretending his choices had been erased because mine had been vindicated. Some weeks were easier than others. One rainy evening, I met him at his sister's bakery after my simulator shift. The place smelled like cinnamon and wet coats. The apartment upstairs had been rented to a graduate student, so we sat at a corner table near the front window. Ethan pushed a mug toward me. "Actual coffee. Growth. I've had supervision." I smiled. Then he placed a flat envelope beside the mug. I recognized it immediately. The Cockpit transcript, the copy I had carried through every hearing, meeting, and hotel room. My name was written across the front in my attorney's handwriting. "I found it in the box from your case," he said. "You opened my box? Your attorney gave it to me." That sounds less criminal. I'm improving. I rested my fingertips on the envelope. For months, those pages had been proof that I had not imagined what happened. Proof that Davis gave me the aircraft. Proof that someone had removed context before strangers judged me. There had been nights when I read the same line until the words stopped looking like language. "You have the aircraft." I had needed that sentence. I was not ashamed of that, but I did not need it the same way anymore. "Do you want me to keep it?" Ethan asked. "No." "Throw it away?" I thought about that. "No." I slipped the envelope into my duffel. The same olive drab bag that had sat unopened beside a hotel bed while millions of people decided who I was. The repaired squadron patch was still tucked into the side pocket. Damage was not failure, but damage was still damage. I had learned not to confuse surviving something with being untouched by it. Outside, someone laughed too loudly near the bakery door. My body reacted before my mind did. A quick tightening in my chest. The old urge to scan the room. Ethan noticed. He did not ask whether I was all right. He did not reach across the table. He simply moved his coffee cup away from the edge so my hand had more space. It was small and ordinary, which was why it was enough. A week later, command cleared me for a supervised return to flight. Not full status. Not yet. I stood beside the aircraft with my helmet under one arm and waited for the familiar certainty to arrive. It didn't. My hand shook when I touched the ladder. I climbed anyway. Before closing the canopy, I checked my phone. One message from Ethan. No speech, no luck, just the words he had learned not to use as a rescue. Ask me tomorrow. I put the phone away. The engine came alive beneath me. For a moment, the vibration brought back the Boeing cockpit, warning lights, rain, and the mechanical voice telling me to pull up. Then the present returned. My aircraft, my hands, my decision. I taxied forward. Some people do not take your life away by shouting. They do it by writing a version of you that sounds believable enough for everyone else to repeat. And sometimes, healing does not begin when somebody proves you were right. It begins when you stop asking permission to tell the truth in your own voice. If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments whether you have ever had to fight for the truth of your own life. And if you want more stories about people finding their way back to themselves, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.